What's up guys? For today's video, I'm going to talk about my opinion on quartz versus solar versus automatic watches. For the majority of us who watch these kinds of videos that are watch collectors, it doesn't really matter as long as it's got good reviews and we like the way it looks, we'll get it. Whether it's an automatic watch or solar watch or so on and so forth. But for the rest of the majority who are just looking for a reliable watch, their question is always which one is going to last forever? And unfortunately, the answer to that question is there is no such thing as a watch that can last forever. At least not with today's technology. Maybe, a super expensive watch that I've never heard of can last forever, but what's readily available to the rest of us average Joes, it doesn't exist. Every single watch, no matter what movement, battery type, what have you, has a lifespan. So I just wanted to go over some different types of watches and go over the pros and cons of quartz, solar, and automatic. And from there, you can determine if automatic watch is right for you or if you're better off with a quartz watch. And again, if you disagree with anything I have to say, please let's continue the discussion in the comment section. This is really just things that I've learned and that I want to share with you. So let's go on and take a look at some watches. So in front of you, we've got a Citizen Hyper Aqualand, a Seiko Tuna SBBN 031, and then a Pulsar PW3001. These are all quartz watches. They operate off of a battery, and that battery will eventually die, and there's no way to charge it. The only way to bring it back to life is to replace the battery. So you might consider that as a negative, but let's go ahead and take a look at what's awesome about these watches. First of all, you can set it and forget it as long as the battery's alive. So you set the time, you don't have to worry about hand winding it, you don't have to worry about putting it out in the sun. While the watch is alive and ticking, you don't need to worry about it. Also, there's really no moving parts. Aside from the Tuna, you've got the hour hand, minute hand, and the second hand. But other than that, it's really all just electrical. And so that being said, that makes it very reliable and durable. You don't really have to worry about, shocking it, by physical activity or things like that. So that's always a positive. And for those of us that are busy on the road all the time, or we've got busy jobs, it's nice to have a watch that you don't have to worry about, considering you're worrying about a million other things in your regular life. So that being said, once the battery dies, what do? Well, that's another actual positive, because swapping out a battery on a quartz watch is a very simple process. I mean, you could probably just, if you don't want to do the maintenance yourself, just take it to a jeweler and they're just going to do the work for you and just remove the case back and swap out the battery. And if you want to do it yourself, feel free to purchase a $20 to $30 watch repair kit or watch maintenance kit off of Amazon and do it yourself. And there's some legwork you got to do. You got to make sure you have some silicone grease to put a new coat on the gasket so that you can get a good watertight seal. But again, it's very simple, just very minor legwork that you got to do in order to maintain your quartz watch. So I think that's a very good thing. Let's go ahead and take a look at some solar watches. Now in front of you, I've got some solar watches. I've got the Citizen Ecozilla, the G-Shock GST S110, and then a Citizen Tough. I've got plenty of other solar watches. I just grabbed a handful here. The great thing about solar watches is exactly that. They're solar. And a lot of them have several months worth of power reserve. I think the lowest I've ever seen was like a 4-month power reserve. So once it's fully charged, you can leave it in your drawer and forget about it for a couple months. And I guarantee you, you won't. You'll probably wear it within the next couple of weeks and it'll keep ticking and very reliable. They're just as reliable as quartz watches. And it's really hard to find a negative about them. For me, ideally, I prefer solar. But that being said, solar watches also do not last forever, whether it's the battery or the solar cell, just any kind of component, eventually it's going to run the course of its life and needs to get replaced. So that's where the negative comes. Some solar watches, the repair or maintenance is very simple. You could probably just order another battery and swap it out yourself. But if it's something more extreme, not really extreme, but something more involved, such as swapping out a solar cell, because solar cells don't last forever, then that will require you to send it to an authorized maintainer, or send it straight back to the factory, and that can take quite a while. I've heard of stories of people sending in their Citizens or Seikos, and they're out of a watch for several months. So you got to ask yourself, which one is better? Is it better to have a Quartz watch where the battery will die eventually, but I can replace it within 30 seconds, or having a solar watch that'll last a very long time, but then once it does die, it's going to take an even longer time to get it back? Just food for thought to think about as you are looking for your next watch purchase. So let's go ahead and take a look at some automatic watches. In front of you, we've got the Seiko Samurai, Seiko Baby Tuna, and the Citizen NY0040. I will be doing a review on this one shortly, but automatic watches are great. I absolutely love them. They remind me of a simpler time, but a more elegant time, I guess, when making things like watches required lots of skill, engineering, knowledge of gears, and all that stuff. So that's why I like automatic watches. And especially that sweeping movement of the second hand, you can't beat that. But the negatives about automatic watches are, first of all, they're automatic. So if you've got a lot of different watches, then you kind of have to be on top of them. Especially if you want to wear them on a daily basis, you got to make sure that they're wound so that the coil spring has enough, I guess, charge. And if you leave it alone for a while, then you got to start all over again. You got to hand wind it again. If it does hand wind, some watches don't have that hand winding capability, so you got to kind of just sit there and shake it to get it going. So unlike quartz watches, you can't really just set it and forget it. Plus, they also do require some basic maintenance and care. So inside all of these moving parts in there, what does that require? That requires some form of lubrication. So if you just have them sitting for long periods of time, then that lubrication is going to settle, and you might run into issues later on down the line. That being said, they're very reliable, and if you take good care of them, then they will last you a majority of your lifespan. But also, along with solar watches, if a component does break on the inside, chances are it's something that the average Joe, like myself, can't fix on their own. So that requires you to send it off to the factory, and that may take several weeks to several months. And so that is a significant con that I am very much aware of, which makes me think that quartz watches really aren't all that bad, because long-term maintenance is much simpler than what you might run into with autos or solars. So there you have it, just a very simple video, just some different things to think about as you are trying to figure out what kind of watch you want. The reason why I thought about making this is because quartz watches always had a bad rap, in my opinion. There were times that I specifically avoided getting a watch because it was a quartz battery watch, and the idea of it possibly or definitely dying in a couple years was just enough for me to say, ugh, I don't want to buy that one. I'm only sticking with autos and solars. But then I thought about it, and quartz watches last for several years. You've got battery life cycles from 2 years all the way up to 10 years. But you also got to consider that lifespan is a very conservative rating from the company. They're assuming that you're going to be pressing all these buttons, using all these functions every day. So for the most part, in my experience, my quartz watches have lasted almost double than what they told me it was going to last. I have a Casio G-Shock that I bought 10 years ago. And 10 years is pretty much the max capacity that a Casio battery is rated for, and it's still going strong, just like the day I bought it. And once the battery dies, all I got to do is take off the case back and swap out the battery, and then I'm hunky dory. So I don't want this to be, hey, Quartz watches are fantastic. I want to say that all watches, if cared for properly, are fantastic, but none of them are perfect. They all have issues that you have to consider. So don't write off an entire class of watches just because you think another one is better. Again, just a discussion. Feel free to let me know if you think I'm completely wrong, but just my 2 cents, and hopefully I can help you buy your next watch, and it might ease some concerns of yours if you are not sure to buy your next one. So anyways, that's all I got to say. Thanks for watching, and tune in for my next episode. All right, bye.